When I stopped by the supermarket to buy my daughter's favorite roses to bring to her house for dinner by chance, I met my old neighbor. She grabbed my hand and said with a worried look, "Your son-in-law has been hiding something from you." When I looked bewildered, she told me a truth that shocked me to the bone. I was forced to make a decision to destroy all the lies in order to save my beloved daughter. Welcome, everyone. Please like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Quick note, this is a fictional story with dramatized elements. Names and details are imaginary, but the message resonates deeply. So what did my neighbor tell me that day? Let's find out. I never thought a Sunday afternoon trip to the grocery store would change everything. The King Soopers on Wadsworth Boulevard in Lakewood wasn't my usual spot. I'd only started coming here after Michelle moved to Highlands Ranch with Brandon 4 years ago. It was convenient right on the way to their house, so I'd stop by to grab something before visiting her. Wine for dinner flowers, maybe some of those chocolate-covered almonds she loved. It became a ritual of sorts. King Soopers first, then Michelle's. That Sunday, I had one simple mission: red roses. She'd invited me to dinner, her first home-cooked meal in weeks, and roses were her favorite. They always had been, ever since she was a little girl, watching her mother arrange them in a vase on our kitchen table. I was inspecting a bouquet near the entrance when I heard a voice behind me. "Walter Green, is that really you?" I turned to find Linda Warren, my former neighbor of 15 years. She wore a King Soopers apron, her silver hair pulled back neatly. We'd lost touch after she moved to live with her son and daughter-in-law almost 2 years ago. "Linda, I didn't know you worked here." "Started a few months ago," she said with a tired smile. "Part-time at the register. Keeps me busy." Then her expression shifted. She glanced around and lowered her voice. "Walter, do you have a minute? I need to talk to you about something. About Brandon." My grip tightened on the cart handle. "What about him?" She hesitated, then leaned closer. "Last Tuesday I saw him here. He was shopping with a woman." "A woman?" "Yes. Young, maybe 30. Long dark hair, very put together. She was wearing a designer coat and had this diamond bracelet on her wrist. Big stones, the kind that catches the light." I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a co-worker? "He works in real estate, meets a lot of people." Linda shook her head slowly. "Walter, they weren't just shopping together. They were together." Brandon had his arm around her waist. She was leaning into him, laughing. They were looking at each other the way married people do, the way you and Sarah used to. The words struck hard, but I kept my voice steady. "Are you sure it was Brandon?" "Walter, I was at his wedding. I've known that boy for years." Her voice was firm now. "When I saw them by the wine aisle, I walked over and called out to say hello. Brandon looked right at me. I know he recognized me. But before I could say anything more, he spoke. Cold as ice, he said, 'I don't know you, ma'am.' Then he took the woman's hand and walked away. I felt my chest tighten. He said he didn't know you." "Yes." Linda's eyes were sad. "Walter, we were neighbors for 15 years. I brought casseroles to your house after Sarah passed. I was at Brandon and Michelle's wedding. I gave them a set of wine glasses, for heaven's sake. He knows exactly who I am." "Maybe he didn't recognize you. It's been a couple years." "No." Linda cut me off gently. "He recognized me. I saw it in his eyes. He just didn't want that woman to know who I was. And the way they were together, Walter. They looked like husband and wife. Not friends, not colleagues. A couple." My throat felt tight. "Did you see what they bought?" She nodded. "I was at the register when they checked out. Expensive wine, gourmet cheese, fresh flowers, roses actually. The total was over $200. He paid with a credit card without blinking. $200 on groceries for a casual Tuesday. Michelle had mentioned money was tight lately. She'd been picking up extra shifts at the hospital, and Brandon said his commission checks were smaller. That's why she'd sent him $25,000 a few months ago, her savings, to help pay for his mother's medical care. Brandon had said his mother Edith was sick and needed treatment, but standing there with Linda's words echoing in my mind, something didn't add up. "Thank you for telling me, Linda." She squeezed my arm. "I hope I'm wrong, Walter, but I couldn't not tell you. If it were my daughter." "I understand." She gave me a sad smile and walked back toward the registers. I stood there for a long moment staring at the roses in my hand. They were beautiful, deep red, full petals, the kind Michelle would love. But now they felt heavier somehow, like they carried the weight of what I'd just learned. I paid at the self-checkout, barely registering the total. My mind was spinning. "I don't know you, ma'am." A lie. A deliberate, calculated lie to a woman who'd been at his wedding. The way Brandon had his arm around that woman. The diamond bracelet. The expensive shopping while claiming money was tight. The $25,000 Michelle had sent for his supposedly sick mother. I walked out into the parking lot, the November air sharp against my face. The sun was starting to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the asphalt. I could see my breath in small white puffs. I reached my truck and opened the door, carefully placing the roses on the passenger seat. For a moment, I just stood there, one hand on the doorframe, looking at those flowers. Maybe Linda was wrong. Maybe there was an explanation. But deep down, I knew better. I climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. The heater kicked on, blowing cold air that would eventually warm up. I sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, staring through the windshield at nothing in particular. Then I put the truck in reverse and pulled out of the parking space. The drive to Highlands Ranch would take 30 minutes. 30 minutes to decide what to do. 30 minutes to figure out how to look my son-in-law in the eye and not let him see the suspicion growing in my chest like a slow-burning fire. I merged onto the highway, the roses beside me, and Linda's words played over and over in my mind. They looked like husband and wife. He said he didn't know me. Over $200 without blinking. My daughter was waiting for me. She'd be so happy to see the roses. She'd smile that beautiful smile and put them in a vase and tell me dinner was almost ready. And Brandon would be there too, smiling, playing the part of the loving husband. But now I would be watching, really watching. I gripped the steering wheel tighter and kept driving, the bouquet of red roses sitting beside me, beautiful and silent, as the doubt in my heart grew with every passing mile. I pulled into Michelle and Brandon's driveway at 6:30 sharp, the roses still resting on the passenger seat. The house looked picture-perfect, white siding, black shutters, manicured lawn. But after my conversation with Linda, everything felt different. I grabbed the roses and walked to the front door. Before I could knock, it swung open. "Dad!" Michelle pulled me into a hug, her face lighting up. She'd traded her scrubs for jeans and a cozy sweater. "You brought roses. You didn't have to." "I wanted to," I said, handing them to her. She buried her face in the blooms and smiled. "They're beautiful. Come in, dinner's almost ready." I stepped inside, and that's when I started noticing things. The first was the purse on the entryway table, a Louis Vuitton, with the signature monogram pattern. I knew because Sarah had admired one years ago, and the price had made my head spin. $2,500. "That's new," I said. Michelle glanced over. "Oh yeah, Brandon surprised me last week. He said I deserved something nice." I forced a smile and followed her into the living room. My eyes went straight to the television mounted on the wall, 75 inches. So new I could still see the faint outline where someone had peeled off the price sticker. "New TV?" I asked. "Got it 2 weeks ago." Brandon's voice came from the kitchen doorway. He walked in with a dish towel over his shoulder, grinning. 75 inches, 4K, the whole deal. Figured we'd treat ourselves. He extended his hand, and I shook it, studying his face. He looked the same as always, clean-cut, confident, polished. But now I couldn't help searching for cracks in that exterior. "Business must be good," I said. "Better than good." Brandon motioned for me to sit. Dio just closed a $2.5 million listing last month. Biggest commission check I've ever seen. The company gave me a bonus on top of it, KPI reward for hitting my quarterly targets. That's impressive. Yeah, it's been a great year. He leaned back casually. That's when I noticed the watch on his wrist, sleek silver with a black face, the Tag Heuer logo glinting under the lights. $2,000 at least. "Nice watch," I said. Brandon glanced at it and smiled. "Oh, treated myself after that last sale. Figured I'd earned it." Michelle came back with the roses arranged in a crystal vase. She sat beside Brandon, leaning into him. He draped his arm over her shoulders. All I could think about was Linda's words. He had his arm around her waist. They looked like husband and wife. "So, how's work, sweetheart?" I asked Michelle. She sighed. "Exhausting. I picked up 2 extra shifts last week. 3 code blues in one night. I barely slept." "You're working too hard." "I know, but..." She glanced at Brandon. "We've had some expenses lately. I wanted to help out." "Help out," I echoed. Brandon jumped in. "Yeah, my mom's been having some health issues. We've been covering her medical bills." I straightened. "Edith, what's wrong?" His expression flickered discomfort, maybe irritation. "She's got heart problems. Needs medication monitoring. It's been expensive." "How expensive?" Michelle answered. "I sent Brandon $25,000 a few months ago, from my savings, to cover her treatment and make sure she was comfortable. $25,000. The number hit me hard. That was Michelle's nest egg, years of savings scraped together from extra shifts and careful budgeting. Money she'd dreamed of using for a bigger house or a trip to Europe. And now it was gone. "That was generous of you," I said, carefully looking at Brandon. "How's your mother doing now?" "She's managing," he said, his tone clipped. "It's been tough, but we're doing what we can." "Where is she staying?" "Pinewood Care Center in Aurora. It's not fancy, but it's close enough that I can check on her." "You visit her often?" Brandon shifted. "When I can. Work's been crazy, you know how it is." I nodded slowly, but my mind was racing. $25,000 for medical bills, a Louis Vuitton purse, a 75-inch TV, a $2,000 watch. If money was so tight, where was all this luxury coming from? "Dinner's ready," Michelle announced, standing. "I made your favorite dad pot roast with roasted vegetables." I followed them into the dining room. The table was set beautifully, cloth napkins, matching plates, candles flickering. Michelle had gone to a lot of trouble trying so hard to make everything perfect. As I sat down across from Brandon, watching him pour wine into expensive glasses and smile that easy, practiced smile, all I could think about was Linda's voice. "I don't know you, ma'am." A lie. A bold-faced lie to a woman who'd been at his wedding, and now sitting here surrounded by expensive things, listening to him talk about his sick mother while my daughter worked herself to exhaustion to pay for care that might not even be real. Something cold settled in my chest. I picked up my fork and took a bite of pot roast, forcing myself to chew, to swallow, to smile at Michelle when she asked if I liked it. "It's perfect, sweetheart," I said. Brandon raised his glass. "To family," he said. I lifted mine and clinked it against his, meeting his eyes across the table. And in that moment, looking at him, at his confident smile, his expensive watch, his carefully crafted image, I felt like I was sitting across from a complete stranger. A stranger who was lying to my daughter. A stranger I no longer recognized at all. Dinner ended around 8:30. Michelle started clearing the plates, and I stood to help, but Brandon waved me off. "Let me get those, Dad," he said with that practiced smile. "You relax." He carried a stack of dishes into the kitchen, and I heard his phone buzz on the counter. A moment later, he reappeared, phone in hand, his expression apologetic. "I'm so sorry," he said to Michelle. "That was the office. I have to run out for a bit client emergency. One of my listings just got a surprise inspection issue, and I need to meet the buyer's agent to smooth things over." Michelle's face fell. "Now Dad just got here." "I know, honey, I'm sorry. It'll only take an hour, maybe less." He kissed her forehead, grabbed his keys from the hook by the door, and looked at me. "Walter, great seeing you. We'll do this again soon, yeah." Before I could respond, he was out the door. The house fell quiet except for the soft clink of dishes as Michelle loaded the dishwasher. I stood in the living room, staring at the empty spot where Brandon had been sitting, my mind churning. An hour ago, I might have believed that story. But after what Linda told me, after seeing all those expensive things, after watching Brandon talk about his sick mother while wearing a $2,000 watch, I didn't believe a word of it. Michelle came back into the living room, wiping her hands on a towel. "Sorry about that, Dad. Brandon's job can be so unpredictable sometimes." "It's fine," I said. Then, before I could stop myself, I added, "Michelle, I need to talk to you about something." She sat down on the couch, tucking her legs underneath her. "What's up?" I took a breath. "Today, when I was at King Soopers, I ran into Linda Warren. You remember her, our old neighbor?" "Oh yeah. How's she doing?" "She's fine. She works there now." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "She told me something that's been bothering me. She said she saw Brandon last week at the store, with a woman." Michelle blinked. "A woman?" "A young woman. Linda said they looked close, like they were together." For a moment, Michelle just stared at me. Then she let out a short laugh. "Dad, are you serious right now?" "I'm just telling you what she said. Linda saw Brandon with a woman and she just assumed that he's cheating on me." Michelle's voice was rising. "Did it occur to you or to her that maybe it was a co-worker? Brandon works with women all the time." "Linda said her name was Amber. Does that sound familiar?" Michelle hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, Amber's a colleague at Coldwell Banker. Brandon's mentioned her before. She's been helping him with some of his bigger listings." Linda said they looked like more than colleagues. "Dad." Michelle stood up, her arms crossed. "What are you trying to say?" "I'm saying Linda knows Brandon. She was at your wedding. She wouldn't make something like this up." "So you believe some random story from a woman you haven't talked to in 2 years over your own son-in-law?" Her voice was sharp, now defensive. "Over me?" "Michelle, I'm not trying to upset you. I just think." "You just think what, Dad?" She cut me off, her eyes flashing. "That Brandon's lying to me, that he's sneaking around. You've never liked him, have you?" "That's not true." "Yes, it is." Her voice cracked. "From the day I brought him home, you've been looking for reasons not to trust him. You never thought he was good enough, and now you're using some gossip from a grocery store to try to tear us apart." "Michelle, listen to me." "No." She shouted, and I saw tears forming in her eyes. "You listen to me. Brandon is my husband. He works hard to provide for us. He takes care of me. And yes, maybe he bought me a nice purse, maybe we got a new TV, so what, he earned that money. He deserves to enjoy it. What about the $25,000 you gave him?" She froze. "What about it? Where did it go, Michelle?" Because if his mother is so sick, if the medical bills are so high, why does he have money for luxury watches and expensive dinners? Her face went pale, then flushed red. How dare you? His mother is dying, and you're standing here accusing him of what stealing from me. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just asking questions. Well, stop asking. She stepped toward me, her hands clenched into fists. You don't get to come into my house and interrogate me about my marriage. You don't get to make me doubt my husband because some old neighbor thinks she saw something. Michelle, get out. The words hit me like a slap. What? I said get out. Her voice was cold, now trembling with anger. I don't want you here. I don't want to hear another word about Brandon or Amber or Linda or any of this. Sweetheart, please. I'm trying to protect you. Protect me. She laughed bitterly. From what? From the man I love. From the life I've built, no dad. You're not protecting me. You're trying to destroy my marriage because you've never trusted him. Because you've never believed I could make my own decisions. That's not true. Yes, it is. Tears were streaming down her face now. You've been doing this my whole life. Ever since Mom died, you've been treating me like I'm still a little girl who needs you to save her. But I'm not. I'm 35 years old. I have a career, a husband, a life. And I don't need you coming in here and tearing it apart. I felt my own eyes sting. Michelle, I love you. I'm your father. I know what you want. Her voice broke. You want me to need you. But I don't. Not like this. So please just leave. I stood there frozen, searching her face for any sign that she didn't mean it. But all I saw was anger and hurt and something else, something that looked like fear. Fear that I might be right. Then if you walk out that door, she said quietly, don't call me, don't text me, just give me space. From now on, you're not my father. Not until you can respect my choices. The words shattered something inside me. I looked at the coffee table where the roses I'd brought still sat in their crystal vase. Beautiful and red and already starting to wilt at the edges. Then I looked at my daughter, my strong, brilliant, heartbroken daughter, and I knew there was nothing I could say that would change her mind tonight. So I nodded, once turned, and walked to the door. I stepped out into the cold November night, and the door slammed shut behind me. I stood there on the porch, my breath fogging in the air, my chest tight with a pain I hadn't felt since Sarah died. But beneath the pain, something else stirred. Determination. If Michelle wouldn't listen, I'd have to find proof. Real, undeniable proof that Brandon was lying to her. And I wasn't going to stop until I had it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying Michelle's words over and over. Don't call me. Don't text me. You're not my father. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, angry, hurt, certain that I was wrong. But I knew I wasn't. By the time the sun came up Monday morning, I'd made my decision. If Michelle wouldn't listen to me, I'd have to find proof she couldn't ignore. Hard evidence that Brandon was lying to her. And I couldn't do that alone. I needed a professional. At 9 o'clock sharp, I was sitting in my truck outside a small office building on Spear Boulevard in downtown Denver. The sign on the second-floor window read, Marcus Reeves, Private Investigations. I'd found him online the night before, scrolling through reviews at 3 in the morning. Former police detective, 15 years of experience, specializes in infidelity and financial fraud. The reviews were solid. People said he was discreet, thorough, and honest. That was enough for me. I climbed the stairs and knocked on the frosted glass door. A voice called out, "Come in." The office was small but tidy. A desk sat near the window covered with file folders and a laptop. 2 chairs faced the desk, and the walls were lined with filing cabinets. No fancy decorations, no pretense. Just a workspace that looked like it got used every day. Behind the desk sat Marcus Reeves. He was maybe 45, with short dark hair starting to gray at the temples, broad shoulders, and the kind of weathered face that came from years of watching people at their worst. He stood and extended his hand. Walter Green. That's me. I shook his hand. His grip was firm. Have a seat. He gestured to one of the chairs and sat back down. You said on the phone this is about your son-in-law. Yeah. I cleared my throat. I think he's cheating on my daughter, and I think he's lying about other things too. Marcus pulled out a notepad and pen. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about Linda seeing Brandon with the young woman at King Soopers, about the expensive purse, the TV, the watch, about the $25,000 Michelle had sent for his supposedly sick mother, about the confrontation at dinner and how Michelle had thrown me out. Marcus listened without interrupting, taking notes in quick, efficient strokes. When I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me. How long have they been married? 4 years. And you've never suspected anything before now? No, Brandon always seemed fine. A little smooth maybe, but I figured that was just his job. Real estate guys are like that. Marcus nodded. They are. Okay, here's what I'm hearing. Possible infidelity, possible financial fraud, and a wife who doesn't want to believe it. That's common. People don't want to see what's right in front of them, especially when it's going to hurt. So you'll help me. I can. He leaned back in his chair. But I need to be clear about what you're asking for. Surveillance isn't cheap and it takes time. If I'm going to follow Brandon, document his movements, find out who this woman is and what's going on with the money, that's a full work week minimum, maybe more. How much? $2,500 for the first week. That includes surveillance, background checks, financial analysis, if I can get access, and a full report with photos and video if I find anything. If we need to go longer, it's another $1,500 per week after that. $2,500. That was more than I'd spent on anything in years outside of house repairs and my truck. But when I thought about Michelle, about the way she'd looked at me last night, so convinced I was wrong, I knew I'd pay 10 times that if it meant protecting her. Done, I said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You don't want to think about it? No. I want you to start today. He nodded slowly, then pulled out a contract and slid it across the desk. I'll need some information. Brandon's full name, date of birth if you know it. His car make and model license plate if you have it. Home address, work address. Any known associates. The woman's name if you have it. I gave him everything I knew. Brandon Coleman, 37 years old. Silver Audi Q5 license plate I'd memorized from seeing it in Michelle's driveway 100 times. Their address in Highlands Ranch. Coldwell Banker's office address downtown. And the name Amber, no last name. But Michelle had said she worked at the same real estate office. Marcus wrote it all down. This Amber, do you know anything else about her? Just that she's young, maybe 30. Dark hair. Linda said she was wearing a diamond bracelet and a designer coat. That's helpful. I'll start with the office, see if I can identify her. He looked up at me. One more thing, Walter. If I find something, and I mean when, because in cases like this, there's usually something to find, it's going to hurt. You're going to see things you don't want to see. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Michelle's face, her trust in Brandon, her belief that I was the one tearing her life apart. I'm prepared, I said. Marcus nodded and stood, extending his hand again. Then we have a deal. I'll start surveillance this afternoon. I'll send you daily updates, text, or email, whichever you prefer. Photos, locations, notes. If I find anything significant, I'll call you right away. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, he said. Let's see what we find first. I left the office and walked back to my truck. The November sky was gray and heavy, threatening rain. I sat behind the wheel for a moment, staring at the contract Marcus had given me, proof that I'd just hired a private investigator to follow my son-in-law. A week ago, I would have laughed at the idea, but now it felt like the only option I had left. I started the engine and drove home, my phone on the seat beside me, waiting for Marcus's first report. Waiting for the truth. The report started coming in Monday afternoon. I was sitting at my kitchen table nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Marcus. First update attached. Call if you have questions. I opened the attachment with shaking hands. The first photo showed Brandon's silver Audi parked in the lot at Cherry Creek Shopping Center. The timestamp read 12:47 p.m., barely 3 hours after I'd left Marcus's office. The second photo made my stomach drop. Brandon stood beside his car, his arm wrapped around a young woman's waist. She was laughing, her head tilted back, long, dark hair catching the sunlight. He was looking down at her with an expression I'd seen him give Michelle 1,000 times: affectionate, intimate, familiar. The third photo showed them kissing. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned, then set the phone down and pressed my palms against the table to stop my hands from shaking. There it was. Proof. Undeniable photographic proof that Linda had been right. I called Marcus. Did you get the photos? He asked. Yeah. My voice sounded hollow. That's her. That's the woman Linda saw. Her name's Amber Wright. 30 years old, works at Coldwell Banker, same office as Brandon. I talked to a couple people who know her. Sounds like they've been seeing each other for over a year. A year. Michelle and Brandon had been married for 4 years, and he'd been cheating on her for at least one of them. I'll keep following him, Marcus said. If there's more, I'll find it. Thank you, I managed. He hung up, and I sat there alone in my kitchen, staring at the photos on my phone, feeling like the floor had opened up beneath me. Tuesday's report came at 2 in the afternoon. This time, it was a video. Marcus had followed Brandon and Amber to Capitol Grill, an upscale steakhouse downtown. The footage showed them sitting at a corner table, candlelight flickering between them. Amber reached across the table and took Brandon's hand. He lifted it to his lips and kissed her knuckles. The video was only 15 seconds long, but it felt like hours. Marcus's text read, "Dinner tab was $287. He paid with the same Visa ending in 4829. Credit card's in his name, but records show it's linked to a joint account with your daughter. Michelle's money. He was spending Michelle's money on another woman." I didn't call Marcus this time. I just sat on my couch and watched the video again and again until I couldn't stand it anymore. Wednesday brought photos from Trice Jewelers, a high-end jewelry store in Centennial. Amber stood at the counter trying on a diamond necklace. The stones caught the light glittering against her neck as she turned to show Brandon. He smiled and nodded, and the salesperson carefully placed the necklace back in its case. Marcus's text, pendant necklace, 1.5 carats, total weight. Price tag $3,847. He didn't buy it that day, but the salesperson said he came back the next morning and purchased it. Paid in full. Same Visa card. $3,847 for a woman who wasn't his wife. I felt sick. Thursday's update came with more video. Brandon and Amber walking out of Trice Jewelers. Brandon carried a small silver bag with the store's logo on it. As they reached his car, he stopped, pulled the necklace out and fastened it around Amber's neck. She threw her arms around him and kissed him right there in the parking lot. Marcus's text, total, confirmed spending so far jewelry $3,847. Restaurants, 3 dinners, $780. Shopping 2 trips to Cherry Creek, estimated $1,200. That's just what I've documented this week. Financial analysis shows similar patterns going back 8 weeks. Rough estimate he spent at least $11,000 on her in 2 months. $11,000. And that was just what Marcus could track. I sat at my kitchen table again, staring at the numbers, doing math I didn't want to do. Michelle had given Brandon $25,000 for his mother's medical care. If he'd spent $11,000 on Amber, where was the rest? I texted Marcus. What about his mother? Can you find out where she is? His response came 10 minutes later, already on it. I'll have an address by tomorrow. Friday morning, my phone rang. I found her, Marcus said. Edith Marshall, 77 years old. She's at a place called Pinewood Care Center in Aurora. It's a basic assisted living facility, not exactly expensive. I talked to the front desk, said I was a family friend. They told me she's been there for 6 months, pays rent with her Social Security checks. No extra funds, no medical treatments, beyond standard care. My blood went cold. No extra funds, none. Whatever money your daughter sent Brandon, it didn't go to his mother. I closed my eyes and leaned against the counter. Jesus. Walter. Marcus's voice was serious. I've been doing this a long time. This isn't just infidelity. This is financial fraud. He took $25,000 from your daughter under false pretenses and spent it on himself and his girlfriend. That's a crime. I know. What do you want to do? I opened my eyes and looked at the photos spread across my kitchen table, Brandon and Amber kissing, holding hands, laughing. The receipt from Trice Jewelers, the video of him fastening a diamond necklace around her neck, while Michelle worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital to make ends meet. I want everything, I said. Every photo, every receipt, every detail you can find. I'm going to show Michelle the truth, and she's going to have to face it. I'll send you the full report this afternoon, Marcus said. But Walter, there's one more thing you should do. What? Go see his mother. Talk to her yourself. If Michelle won't believe the photos, maybe she'll believe Edith. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. I will. Good luck, Marcus said, and hung up. I stood in my kitchen staring at my phone at the evidence of my son-in-law's betrayal, stacked up in texts and photos and cold, hard numbers. $25,000. Gone. And Michelle had no idea. At 1 o'clock, my phone buzzed one last time. Another text from Marcus' final report sent to your email. Pinewood Care Center address 2847 Peoria Street, Aurora, Colorado. Visiting hours 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily. Her room number is 14. I stared at the address for a long moment. Then I grabbed my keys. It was time to meet Edith Marshall. Saturday morning, I drove to Aurora. Pinewood Care Center sat on a quiet street lined with bare trees, a low brick building that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. The parking lot was half empty, the asphalt cracked. A faded sign near the entrance read, Visiting hours 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily. I parked and sat for a moment staring at the building. This was where Brandon's mother lived. The woman Michelle had given $25,000 to help. I grabbed the small bag of groceries I'd brought, oranges, crackers, chocolate, and walked inside. The lobby smelled like disinfectant and overcooked vegetables. A tired-looking receptionist barely glanced up as I approached. I'm here to see Edith Marshall, I said. Room 14. She nodded toward a hallway. Down there, second door on the left. I walked down the narrow corridor, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I found room 14 and knocked gently. Come in, a thin voice called. The room was small, maybe 10 by 12 feet, a single bed with a faded floral blanket, a wooden dresser with a few framed photos, a small television on a rolling cart. The window overlooked the parking lot half covered by drawn blinds. Sitting in a worn armchair by the window was Edith Marshall. She was tiny, maybe 5 feet tall, barely 100 pounds. Her white hair was thin and pulled back in a bun, and she wore an oversized cardigan over a simple house dress. Her hands, resting on the chair arms, were gnarled with arthritis. "Mrs. Marshall," I said softly. She looked up, her pale blue eyes wary. "Yes. My name is Walter Green. I'm Michelle's father, Brandon's father-in-law." Her expression shifted surprise, then relief. "Michelle's father. Oh my goodness. Please sit down." She gestured to the bed. I set the groceries on the dresser and sat. "I brought you a few things." "That's very kind." Her voice trembled. "I don't get many visitors. Brandon doesn't come by." Her face fell. "No, he calls sometimes, maybe once a month. But he hasn't been here in 6 months. Maybe longer." 6 months. "What about Michelle? Does she visit?" Edith shook her head sadly. "No, but she calls. Or she tries to. She's such a sweet girl, always asking how I'm doing. But Brandon told me not to answer when she calls." I stared at her. "He told you not to answer?" "Yes. He said it would upset her to know how I'm really doing, that it's better if I don't talk to her." So I stopped picking up. Brandon hadn't just lied to Michelle. He'd actively blocked her from his mother. "Mrs. Marshall," I said carefully, "Michelle sent Brandon $25,000. She thought it was for your medical care. Treatments, medications, making sure you were comfortable." Edith's eyes went wide. $25,000. "Yes." She shook her head slowly. "I haven't seen a penny of that money. I pay my rent here with Social Security, $1,200 a month. That's all I have. The staff are kind, but this place isn't expensive, and I'm not getting any special treatments, just regular medications for blood pressure and arthritis." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "He told Michelle you were very sick, that you needed the money." "I'm not sick," Edith said, her voice breaking. "I'm just old and lonely." We sat in silence. I looked around the room, the thin blanket, the ancient television, the drafty window. Cold air seeped in despite the cardigan wrapped around her. "Mrs. Marshall, do you have a winter coat?" She blinked. "I have an old one, but it's worn out. The zipper's broken." "Brandon promised to buy you a new one, didn't he?" Her eyes filled with tears. "How did you know?" "Just a guess. He said he'd get me a navy blue one, a warm one, but he never did." She wiped her eyes. "I don't mean to complain. He's my son. I'm sure he's busy. Too busy to visit his mother. Too busy to buy her a coat, but not too busy to spend $11,000 on his girlfriend." I stood up. "Mrs. Marshall, I'm going to buy you that coat. Navy blue, just like he promised. And I'm going to bring Michelle here to see you. Soon." Edith looked up at me, her eyes wide with hope. "You will, I promise." She reached out and took my hand, her grip weak but warm. "Thank you, Walter. You're a good man. Michelle is lucky to have you." I squeezed her hand gently and left. I sat in my truck, staring at the building. The image of Edith's cold, lonely room burned into my mind. $25,000. Michelle had given Brandon $25,000. Marcus had tracked 11,000 spent on Amber jewelry dinners shopping. That left $14,000. $14,000 that wasn't going to Edith's care. Wasn't going to medical bills or a better facility or the warm coat Brandon had promised her. Where had it gone? I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. I just met his mother, I said, and she's living in a bare room with broken heating, paying rent with Social Security. She hasn't seen a dime of that $25,000. Brandon's been lying about everything. Marcus was quiet for a moment. So, what's your next move? I looked back at the building at the window where Edith's room was. I thought about Michelle working herself to exhaustion, trusting the man she loved. I thought about Brandon kissing Amber in parking lots, fastening diamond necklaces around her neck, spending money that wasn't his, while his own mother sat alone in a cold room waiting for a coat he'd never buy. I'm going to find out where the rest of that money went, I said, and then I'm going to show Michelle everything. Every photo, every receipt, every lie. Good, Marcus said. I'll keep digging. I hung up and started the engine. $14,000. Brandon had stolen from Michelle, abandoned his mother, lied to everyone, and I was going to make sure he paid for it. I was still sitting in my truck outside Pinewood Care Center when my phone buzzed at 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon. An email from Marcus. The subject line read, "Urgent. Found something big." I opened it. Walter, I dug into Brandon's credit card records from the past 2 months. November 3rd to 7th, he told Michelle he was going to San Diego for a real estate conference. That was a lie. I traced his hotel booking to the St. Regis Aspen Resort in Colorado. 4 nights, $1,350 total, paid with his visa ending in 4829. Amber Wright posted photos from Aspen on social media. During those exact dates, she deleted them after 24 hours. But I got screenshots before they disappeared. I'm attaching everything. Call me. My hands shook as I scrolled through the attachments. The first was a screenshot from Amber's social media. The photo showed her standing on a snow-covered balcony mountains in the background, wearing a fur-trimmed coat and holding a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Living my best life." The location tag, St. Regis Aspen Resort. The date, November 4th, 2024. The second attachment was a hotel receipt. St. Regis Aspen Resort. Guest name, Brandon Coleman. Check-in, November 3rd, check-out, November 7th. Room rate, $337.50 per night. Total, $1,350. Payment method, Visa ending in 4829. The same card he'd used to buy Amber's necklace. The same card linked to the joint account he shared with Michelle. I kept scrolling. Marcus had included a breakdown of estimated expenses, hotel, $1,350 meals, approximately $400 ski lift passes, $200 miscellaneous, $100. Total estimated cost, $2,050. Add that to the $3,847 necklace from Trice Jewelers, the $780 in restaurant bills, the $1,200 in shopping trips Marcus had already documented. Brandon had spent over $7,000 on Amber in a single month, while Michelle worked 12-hour shifts and sent him $25,000 to care for his supposedly dying mother. I called Marcus. "Did you get it?" he asked. "Yeah." My voice was hoarse. "San Diego." He told her San Diego. I checked. There was no real estate conference in San Diego those dates. He made it up. I closed my eyes and leaned my head back against the seat. "How did you get the social media photos if she deleted them?" "I have software that archives posts before they disappear. It's standard for investigations like this." The posts were public for about 18 hours before she took them down, probably realized it was stupid to broadcast a secret trip. But by then, I'd already captured them. Is there more? One more thing, Marcus said. I found another photo she posted from a restaurant in Aspen, high-end steakhouse called Matsuhisa. I called them, said I was trying to track down a receipt for tax purposes. They confirmed a reservation under Brandon Coleman for 2 people on November 5th at 7 p.m. Bill was $340. $340 for one dinner. Walter, I know this is hard to hear, but you need to understand what you're dealing with. This isn't just an affair. Brandon is living a double life. He's taking your daughter's money and using it to fund a relationship with another woman. Fancy trips, expensive dinners, jewelry. Meanwhile, his mother is sitting in a care facility with a broken coat zipper. I know. What are you going to do? I opened my eyes and stared through the windshield at Pinewood Care Center. I need to talk to Michelle, not to accuse her or upset her, just to confirm the timeline. If she tells me Brandon went to San Diego those dates, then I know for sure he's been lying to her face. Just be careful, Marcus said. If she's still in denial, she might warn him you're investigating. I'll be careful. I hung up and sat there for a long moment, phone in my hand, trying to decide how to approach this. Finally, I dialed Michelle's number. She answered on the 3rd ring. Dad. Her voice was guarded cold. We hadn't spoken since she'd thrown me out Sunday night. Hi, sweetheart, I said, keeping my tone light. I know you asked for space, and I'm respecting that. I just wanted to check in. How are you? Silence, then, I'm fine. Good. That's good. I paused. I was thinking about Brandon's work. He mentioned he travels a lot for showings and conferences. Does he go out of town often? Sometimes. Why? No reason. Just curious. Has he had any trips recently? Another pause. He went to San Diego a couple weeks ago. A real estate conference. He was gone 4 days. My chest tightened. Early November. Yeah, November 3rd through the 7th. Why are you asking? Just making conversation. I forced myself to sound casual. How was it? Did he enjoy the conference? I think so. He said it was exhausting, lots of networking, late meetings. He came home pretty tired. Tired. Because he'd been skiing in Aspen with his girlfriend, not attending a conference in San Diego. That sounds tough, I said. Well, I'm glad he's working hard. Dad, why are you really calling? I just miss you, Michelle. I hate how we left things. Her voice softened slightly. I miss you too. But I meant what I said. I need you to trust me and my marriage. I know. I'm trying. We talked for a few more minutes, small talk, careful and strained, and then she said she had to go. I told her I loved her. She hesitated, then said it back. When I hung up, I stared at Marcus's email on my phone. Michelle had just confirmed it. Brandon told her he went to San Diego for a conference from November 3rd to 7th. But he hadn't. He'd gone to Aspen, with Amber, and spent over $2,000 of Michelle's money doing it. I sat there in the parking lot of Pinewood Care Center, looking at the photos on my screen. Amber on the balcony with champagne. Brandon's name on the hotel receipt. The restaurant bill. The ski passes. My daughter was working herself to exhaustion, trusting her husband completely. And he was lying to her face. Over and over again. I realized then, with painful clarity, that Michelle wouldn't believe me if I just told her. She'd already chosen Brandon's word over mine once. She'd thrown me out of her house for even suggesting he was unfaithful. But she couldn't argue with proof. Hard evidence. Photos, receipts. A paper trail she couldn't deny. I needed more than what I had. I needed everything. Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock, I walked into the Coldwell Banker office on Grant Street in downtown Denver. The building was modern, all glass and polished steel, with the company logo gleaming above the entrance. I'd driven past it 100 times, but never been inside. Now, standing in the marble lobby, I felt like I was stepping into enemy territory. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor and pushed through the glass doors into the real estate office. The space was open and bright, with rows of desks separated by low partitions. Framed photos of expensive homes lined the walls. A handful of agents sat at their computers talking on phones or typing away. At the front desk sat a young woman with blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Her name tag read, Jessica. I approached with what I hoped was a friendly smile. "Good afternoon. I'm looking for Brandon Coleman. Is he available?" Jessica looked up and smiled back. "Oh, Brandon. He's out to lunch right now. He should be back in about 30 minutes. Are you here for a showing?" "Actually, I was hoping to discuss listing my house. A friend recommended Brandon." "That's great. He's one of our top agents." She glanced at her computer screen. "Let me check his schedule. Can I get your name, Walter Green?" As she typed, she said casually, "Brandon just left about 20 minutes ago. He went to lunch with Amber, his girlfriend. They usually go to that Italian place down the street on Mondays." I froze. "His girlfriend..." I kept my voice steady. "Yeah, Amber, right. She works here too. She's one of our newer agents. They've been together for like over a year now. Super cute couple." Jessica smiled, oblivious to the bomb she'd just dropped. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I didn't know Brandon had a girlfriend. That's nice." "Oh yeah, they're pretty serious. She's really sweet. Let me see if I can get you on his calendar for later this week." "Excuse me." A man's voice interrupted. I turned to see a guy in his 40s walking over wearing a dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He extended his hand. "I'm Tom Mitchell, one of the senior agents here." I couldn't help overhearing. "You're looking to list a property." I shook his hand. "Walter Green." "Yes, potentially." "Great. Brandon's excellent, but if you'd like, I can help you while you wait. Want to grab a coffee in the break room?" "Sure." I followed Tom to a small break room in the back, a kitchenette with a coffee maker, a table, and a few chairs. He poured 2 cups and handed me one. "So," Tom said, sitting down, "you're a friend of Brandon's." "Actually, I'm his father-in-law." Tom blinked. "Father-in-law?" "Yeah, he's married to my daughter Michelle." Tom's face went completely blank. He stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. "Married?" "Yes, 4 years now." Tom set his coffee down slowly. "I'm sorry, are we talking about the same Brandon Coleman, tall guy, dark hair, drives a silver Audi?" "That's him." "Brandon's married?" Tom's voice rose slightly. "Are you sure?" "Positive. I was at the wedding." Tom leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face. "Jesus Christ, I've worked with Brandon for 3 years. I've never heard him mention a wife. Not once." My chest tightened. "Never, never. He talks about Amber all the time, where they went for dinner trips, they're planning gifts he's buying her. The whole office knows they're together. But a wife..." Tom shook his head. "He's never said a word." "What about social events, office parties? Does he bring anyone?" "He brings Amber, every time. Last year's Christmas party, the summer picnic, happy hours. It's always Amber." Tom looked genuinely disturbed now. "Walter, I'm being straight with you. Everyone here thinks Brandon's single. Well, not single anymore because of Amber, but definitely not married. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. So he's been pretending Michelle doesn't exist. I guess so. I mean, damn, I had no idea. Tom paused. Does your daughter know about Amber? She knows Amber's name. Brandon told her Amber's a colleague. Nothing more. Tom let out a long breath. Man, that's messed up. I'm really sorry. I wouldn't have said anything if I'd known. No. I cut him off. I'm glad you did. I needed to hear it. We sat in silence for a moment. From the main office, I could hear phones ringing, people talking, the hum of daily business. Normal sounds. But nothing about this felt normal. How long did you say they've been together? I asked. Brandon and Amber. Over a year at least. Maybe longer. They started getting close around last summer, I think. July or August. By fall, it was pretty obvious they were a couple. Over a year. My mind raced doing the math. Michelle and Brandon had their third wedding anniversary last June, which meant he'd started seeing Amber barely a month later. Does Amber know he's married? I asked. Tom shrugged. I have no idea. If she does, she's never mentioned it either. I stood up my coffee untouched. Thank you for your honesty, Tom. Yeah, of course. He stood too, looking uncomfortable. Listen, are you going to talk to Brandon about this? Eventually. Do me a favor, don't tell him I said anything. I don't need the drama at work. I won't. Tom walked me back to the lobby. Jessica looked up as we passed, still cheerful and oblivious. Did you want to schedule something with Brandon, Mr. Green? Not today, I said. I'll call him. I walked out of the office and down to the parking garage, my footsteps echoing in the concrete stairwell. When I reached my truck, I sat behind the wheel and gripped it hard, trying to steady my breathing. Brandon had erased Michelle from his life. At work, he was single. Dating Amber, taking her to office parties, introducing her to colleagues, building a whole separate world where his wife didn't exist. And everyone believed him. Jessica thought Amber was his girlfriend. Tom had worked with him for 3 years and never heard Michelle's name. The entire office saw him as one half of a happy couple, just not the couple he'd actually married. My daughter had been deleted. I started the engine and pulled out of the garage onto Grant Street, heading home. But I wasn't going home to rest. I was going home to call Marcus, because now I had everything I needed. Tuesday morning, I drove back to Marcus's office. When I walked in, he was already waiting, a thick manila folder sitting on his desk. He gestured to the chair across from him. This is everything, he said, tapping the folder. Every photo, every receipt, every detail I could find. It's all here. I sat down and he slid the folder across the desk. I opened it. The first page was a timeline, dates, locations, events, all laid out in neat columns. November 3 to 7, Aspen trip with Amber Wright. November 10, jewelry purchase at Trice Jewelers, $3,847. November 12th, dinner at Capitol Grill, $287. On and on, a chronicle of betrayal spelled out in black and white. Behind the timeline were the photos, more than 50 of them. Brandon and Amber at Cherry Creek Shopping Center holding hands in the parking lot. Brandon fastening the diamond necklace around her neck. The two of them at a candlelit table at Capitol Grill, Amber on the balcony and Aspen champagne in hand. Then came the receipts. Hotel bills, restaurant tabs, credit card statements showing charges to the Visa ending in 4829, the joint account Brandon shared with Michelle. I dug deeper into Amber Wright, Marcus said. 30 years old. She and Brandon dated about 6 years ago before he met your daughter. They broke up. He moved on, married Michelle. Then, a year and a half ago, Amber got hired at Coldwell Banker. They reconnected and started the affair. Yeah, from what I can tell, Amber thinks Brandon's getting divorced. She's been posting on social media about new beginnings and fresh starts. I don't think she knows he's still living with his wife. I closed my eyes for a moment. Even Amber was being lied to. How much has he spent on her? I asked. Marcus pulled out a spreadsheet. Based on what I can document, Trice Jewelers necklace, $3,847. Aspen trip, approximately $2,050. 3 dinners at high-end restaurants, $780. Shopping trips at Cherry Creek, estimated $1,200. Flowers, wine gifts, another $600 or so. Total confirmed spending just over $11,000. In 2 months. In 2 months, Marcus confirmed. And that's just what I could track. There's probably more. I stared at the numbers. $11,000 of Michelle's money spent on another woman. And that left $14,000 from the original $25,000, still unaccounted for. What about the rest of the money? I asked. Marcus shook his head. I can't trace it. It's possible he moved it to a separate account I don't have access to, or spent it on things that don't leave a paper trail. Cash withdrawals, maybe. Or he's saving it. Either way, it didn't go to his mother. I thought about Edith sitting in that cold room with her broken coat zipper, living on $1,200 a month in Social Security, while her son stole from his wife. Walter. Marcus said, his voice serious. I need to warn you. When you confront Brandon with this, he's going to know he's been caught. And cornered people do unpredictable things. He might get angry. He might threaten you or Michelle or both. Be prepared. I will. Do you have a plan? Yeah. I looked down at the folder. I'm going to organize all of this, put it into categories so Michelle can see exactly what he's done. Then I'm going to call her and ask her to come over. I won't tell her what it's about, I'll just say I want to talk. Marcus nodded. She might not come. She was pretty clear about needing space. I know. That's why I'm going to use something she can't refuse. What's that? I hesitated, then said, my wife Sarah had a pearl necklace. It was her mother's, passed down through the family. When Sarah died, I kept it. I've been meaning to give it to Michelle for years, but I was waiting for the right moment. She knows about it. She's asked about it before. And you're going to use it as bait. Yeah. The word tasted bitter. I'll tell her I want to give it to her. That it's time. She'll come. And when she does, I'll show her everything. Marcus leaned back in his chair. That might work. Just be ready for her reaction. Denial, anger, maybe even blaming you for digging into her marriage. It's not going to be easy. I know. He stood and extended his hand. Good luck, Walter. I hope she listens. I shook his hand, gathered the folder, and left. Back home, I spread everything out on my kitchen table. Photos, receipts, timelines, notes. I spent the rest of the day organizing it into 5 folders, each one labeled clearly. Folder 1, The Office. Jessica's comments about Amber being Brandon's girlfriend. Tom's confirmation that no one at Coldwell Banker knew Brandon was married. A printout of the company directory showing both Brandon and Amber's names. Folder 2, The Affair. Photos of Brandon and Amber together. Kissing in parking lots. Holding hands at restaurants. The diamond necklace. Folder 3, The Aspen Trip. The hotel receipt from St. Regis Aspen Resort. Screenshots of Amber's social media posts. The restaurant bill from Matsuhisa. Proof that Brandon lied about going to San Diego. Folder 4, The Money. A breakdown of the $11,000 Marcus had traced. The $25,000 Michelle had sent Brandon. The The math showing how much was missing. Folder 5, the mother. Photos I'd taken of Edith's room at Pinewood Care Center. Notes from my conversation with her. Proof that she'd received no money, no care, nothing. When I finished, I sat back and looked at the 5 folders lined up on my table. Then I went to my bedroom and opened the top drawer of my dresser. Beneath a stack of old t-shirts wrapped in a velvet cloth was Sarah's pearl necklace. I carried it back to the kitchen and set it beside the folders. The pearls gleamed softly in the afternoon light, delicate and beautiful. Sarah had worn it on our wedding day, on Michelle's baptism, on every anniversary we'd celebrated together. Now I was going to use it as bait to lure my daughter into facing a truth she didn't want to see. I picked up my phone and stared at Michelle's name in my contacts. Then I set the phone down. Not yet. I needed to be ready. I needed to make sure I could stay calm, stay strong, no matter how Michelle reacted. I looked at the necklace, at the folders, at the evidence of my son-in-law's betrayal, and I knew that tomorrow I would make the call. Tomorrow, Michelle would have to face the truth. Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my phone. The 5 folders were stacked neatly in front of me. Sarah's pearl necklace sat in its velvet case beside them. Everything was ready. I just had to make the call. I picked up the phone, took a deep breath, and dialed Michelle's number. It rang 3 times. 4. I was starting to think she wouldn't answer when I heard her voice. "Dad." She sounded guarded, tired, like she'd been expecting this call, but dreading it. "So, hi, sweetheart," I said, keeping my voice gentle. "I know you asked for space, and I've been trying to respect that, but I need to talk to you." Silence on the other end. Then, about what? Not about Brandon, not about anything that happened last week. I promise. I paused. I want to apologize for how I handled things at dinner, for upsetting you. You were right, I should have trusted your judgment. More silence. I could hear her breathing, weighing my words. "Okay," she said finally. "Apology accepted. Is that all?" "No." I looked down at the pearl necklace. "I found something. Your mother's necklace. The pearl one." I heard her inhale sharply. "Mom's pearls." "Yeah, I've been looking for it for months. I knew it was somewhere in the house, but I couldn't remember where I'd put it after she—" I let the sentence trail off. "Anyway, I found it yesterday, in the back of my dresser." "Dad." Michelle's voice softened, and I could hear the shift immediately. "You found it." "I did, and I want you to have it. Your mother always said it should be yours." Michelle was quiet for a long moment. I knew what that necklace meant to her. She'd watched Sarah wear it on special occasions her whole life. At our anniversary dinners, at Michelle's college graduation, at parent-teacher conferences when Michelle was in elementary school and Sarah wanted to look her best. The last time Sarah wore it was at Michelle's wedding. She'd insisted on it, said it was tradition that something borrowed, something blue wasn't enough, without something that connected 3 generations of women. "I thought it was lost," Michelle said, and I could hear the emotion catching in her voice. "So did I. But it's here. It's safe. And it's yours. Can I come get it?" "Of course, but I'd like to do this properly. Come over for dinner, Saturday night, 7 o'clock. I'll make pot roast the way you like it with the carrots and those little red potatoes. We can talk, have a nice evening, and I'll give you the necklace. What do you say?" Another pause. I held my breath, waiting. "Just you and me?" she asked carefully. "Well, Brandon's welcome too if he wants to come. I don't want to exclude him. This is a family thing, and he's family." The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I forced them out. I heard muffled voices on the other end of the line, Michelle covering the phone talking to someone in the background. Brandon, almost certainly. I couldn't make out the exact words, but I could hear the tone. His voice was low, insistent. Hers was questioning, uncertain. The conversation lasted maybe 15 seconds. Then Michelle came back on the line. "Brandon says he'd like to come," she said. "If that's really okay with you." "Perfect. Exactly what I needed. Of course it's okay," I said, injecting warmth into my voice. "I'd be happy to have him. 7 o'clock Saturday. I'll have everything ready." "Okay." Michelle sounded relieved, maybe even a little hopeful. "Saturday at 7. We'll be there." "Thank you, sweetheart. I'm really looking forward to it. It's been too long since we've had a proper family dinner." "Me too, Dad. And thank you for finding the necklace, for wanting to give it to me. It means a lot." "I know it does," I said quietly. "Your mother would want you to have it. She always did. I love you, Dad." The words hit me harder than I expected. "I love you too, sweetheart. More than you know." We said our goodbyes and I hung up. I sat there for a long moment, phone still in my hand, staring at the 5 folders on the table. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking slightly. Saturday, 7 o'clock. Michelle and Brandon would walk through my door expecting a reconciliation dinner and a family heirloom. Instead, they'd get the truth. All of it. I set the phone down and picked up Sarah's pearl necklace. The pearls gleamed softly in the morning light, smooth and perfect. Sarah had worn this on our wedding day, on the day Michelle was born, on every important occasion for 30 years. And now I was using it as bait to lure my daughter into the hardest conversation of her life. "I'm sorry, Sarah," I whispered to the empty kitchen, "but I have to do this. I have to save her." I placed the necklace carefully back in its velvet case and closed the lid. Then I looked at the 5 folders again. Each one contained a piece of Brandon's betrayal. Each one held proof that would shatter Michelle's world. But it had to be done. Because Brandon was coming. He'd taken the bait just like I'd hoped. He probably thought this was his chance to smooth things over, to play the loving son-in-law, to prove to Michelle once and for all that her father was the problem. He had no idea what was waiting for him. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the cold November morning. 3 more days. 72 hours until Saturday night. 3 more days to prepare myself for what I was about to do. I thought about Michelle's voice on the phone. The way it had softened when I mentioned the necklace. The way she'd said, "I love you, Dad," before hanging up. In 3 days, she might never say those words to me again. But if it meant saving her from a man who was bleeding her dry, stealing from her, lying to her face every single day, then I'd accept that. I turned back to the table and looked one more time at the evidence of Brandon Coleman's betrayal. The office folder, the affair folder, the Aspen folder, the money folder, the mother folder. 5 folders that would destroy a marriage. 5 folders that would break my daughter's heart. But 5 folders that told the truth. And the truth was all I had left to give her. I picked up my keys and headed to the grocery store. I had a pot roast to make. Saturday at 7 o'clock, Brandon Coleman would walk into my house thinking he'd won. But by the end of the night, he'd know exactly what it felt like to lose everything. Because that's what he'd taken from my daughter. And I was going to make damn sure she got it back. Thursday morning, I woke up before dawn. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Michelle's face the way she'd look when I showed her the folders. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the anger. But I had to do this. So I got up, made coffee, and started preparing. By 8 o'clock, I was at the grocery store. I walked the aisles, slowly picking out everything I needed for pot roast. A good cut of beef chuck, thick and marbled, fresh carrots, small red potatoes, yellow onions, a bottle of red wine, nothing too expensive, just something decent to deglaze the pan. Fresh thyme and rosemary from the produce section. At the checkout, the clerk smiled and asked if I was having company. "My daughter," I said, "and her husband." "That's nice. I hope you have a wonderful dinner." I nodded and paid, knowing that wonderful wasn't the word I'd use for what Saturday night was going to be. I drove home and unpacked the groceries, putting everything away carefully. Then, I spent the rest of Thursday morning cleaning. I vacuumed the living room, dusted the shelves, wiped down the coffee table where the folders would sit. I wanted everything to be perfect, or as perfect as it could be for what I was about to do. In the afternoon, I moved to the kitchen. I scrubbed the counters, cleaned out the refrigerator, made sure I had enough plates and silverware. Sarah's good china was still in the cabinet, white with delicate blue flowers around the edges. I took it down, washed each piece by hand, and set it aside to dry. By evening, the house looked better than it had in months. Almost like Sarah was still here, keeping everything in order. I sat down at the kitchen table with the 5 folders spread in front of me. I opened each one, reading through the contents again. The photos, the receipts, the notes from my conversation with Tom at Coldwell Banker, the timeline of Brandon's lies. I rehearsed what I was going to say, how I'd start, how I'd present each piece of evidence, how I'd stay calm when Michelle got angry and she would get angry. I practiced in front of the bathroom mirror, speaking out loud to my own reflection. "Michelle, I know this is hard to hear, but I need you to look at these photos. Brandon told you he went to San Diego. Here's proof he was in Aspen. Your mother deserved better than this, and so do you." The words felt heavy in my mouth, rehearsed lines for a conversation that would destroy my daughter's marriage. I went to bed late Thursday night, but sleep didn't come easy. Friday morning, I woke up to my phone ringing. It was Marcus. "Just checking in," he said. "You still going through with it tomorrow?" "Yeah." "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine." I lied. "Walter, I've done this job a long time. I've seen a lot of confrontations. They don't always go the way you hope. Be prepared for Michelle to defend him, to get angry at you instead of him. People don't want to believe the worst about the person they love." "I know." "And be careful with Brandon. If he feels cornered, he might react badly. Yelling threats may be worse. Do you have anyone who can be there with you?" "No. It has to be just the 3 of us." Marcus sighed. "All right. But if things get out of hand, call the police. Don't try to handle it yourself." "I won't." "Good luck, Walter. I hope she listens." "Me too." I hung up and spent the rest of Friday morning preparing the pot roast. I browned the beef in a heavy Dutch oven, the smell filling the kitchen. Then I added the wine, the broth, the vegetables, the herbs. I covered it and slid it into the oven on low heat, letting it cook slowly the way Sarah used to do it. By noon, the house smelled like home, like family dinners and Sunday afternoons and everything Michelle associated with safety and love. I hated that I was using that against her. At 6 o'clock Friday evening, I took the 5 folders and carried them into the living room. I opened the cabinet under the coffee table and placed them inside, hidden but ready. All I'd have to do tomorrow was reach down and pull them out. Then I went back to the kitchen and checked the pot roast. It was perfect, the meat falling apart, the vegetables tender. I turned off the oven and let it rest. At 6:45, I set the dining room table. Sarah's good china, cloth napkins, candles in the center. I opened the velvet case with the pearl necklace and placed it on a small blue cushion at the head of the table, right where Michelle would sit. The pearls gleamed in the candlelight. I stood there for a moment looking at the table. It looked beautiful, like a celebration. But it wasn't. It was a trap. I checked my watch. 6:55. Michelle and Brandon would be here any minute. I walked to the living room and stood by the window watching the street. The sun had already set and the neighborhood was quiet. A few houses had their porch lights on. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. Then I saw headlights turn onto my street. A silver Audi. My heart started pounding. The car pulled into my driveway and stopped. The engine cut off. The doors opened. Michelle stepped out first, wearing a dark blue dress and a coat. Brandon followed, dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt. They looked like they were going to a nice dinner. They had no idea. I moved away from the window and walked to the front door. 6:58. The doorbell rang. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and opened the door. At 7 o'clock, Michelle and Brandon stepped into my house. Michelle looked around, taking in the clean living room, the smell of pot roast wafting from the kitchen. She smiled, but it was tentative, guarded. The tension from our last conversation still hung between us. "Hi, Dad," she said again, softer this time. Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Let me take your coats." Brandon handed me his jacket, flashing that practiced smile of his. "Thanks for having us, Walter. How've you been?" "Good," I lied. "Really good. Come on, dinner's just about ready." I led them into the dining room. Michelle's eyes went immediately to the table, the candles, the good china, the pearl necklace sitting on its blue velvet cushion at her place setting. She gasped. "Dad, is that your mother's pearls?" I finished. "Go ahead, take a look." She walked over slowly, almost reverently, and picked up the necklace. The pearls gleamed in the candlelight as she held them up, her eyes filling with tears. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I can't believe you found it. I told you I would." She looked at me, and for a moment the tension between us dissolved. "Thank you. You can put it on after dinner if you want. For now, let's eat." We sat down, Michelle and Brandon on one side of the table, me across from them. I served the pot roast, spooning the tender beef and vegetables onto their plates. Steam rose from the food, and for a few minutes the only sound was the clink of silverware against china. "This is delicious, Dad," Michelle said, breaking the silence. "Your mother's recipe. I'm glad you like it." Brandon cut into his beef and nodded. "Really good, Walter. You're a great cook." "Thanks." The conversation was stilted, polite, like we were all strangers trying to make small talk. I watched Brandon as he ate, the way he smiled at Michelle, the way he touched her hand briefly when she passed him the salt. He looked relaxed, confident. He had no idea what was coming. "So," Brandon said after a few minutes, leaning back slightly. "I had a great week at work. Closed 2 deals, both of them big ones. Commission's looking good. Should be around $15,000 for the month." "That's impressive," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Yeah, it's been a strong quarter. I'm actually thinking about upgrading my car, maybe trade in the Audi for something newer." Michelle glanced at him. "I thought we were saving for a down payment on a bigger house." "We are," Brandon said smoothly. "But we can do both. Business is good, honey. We can afford it." I said nothing, just took another bite of pot roast. $15,000. Another round of lies, another performance. Michelle turned to me. "Dad, can I see the necklace again? After dinner?" "Of course," I said. "I'll give it to you properly, in the living room with coffee. Your mother would have wanted it that way." She smiled, and I saw the little girl. She used to be the one who believed the best of everyone, who trusted without question. It broke my heart. We finished dinner in near silence. I cleared the plates, waved off Michelle's offer to help, and brought out coffee on a tray. Then I gestured toward the living room. Let's sit in there. More comfortable. Michelle and Brandon followed me in. She sat on the couch, and he sat beside her, his arm draped casually over the back of the cushions. I sat in the armchair across from them, the coffee table between us. I poured 3 cups of coffee, handed them out, and set the tray aside. So, Michelle said, her voice eager. The necklace. In a minute, I said. First, there's something I need to talk to you both about. Her smile faltered. Dad, you said this wasn't about... It's not about our argument, I interrupted gently. It's something else. Something important. Brandon straightened slightly, his expression shifting. What's this about Walter? I didn't answer. Instead, I reached down and opened the cabinet under the coffee table. I pulled out the 5 folders and set them on the table between us. Michelle stared at them, her brow furrowing. The folders were labeled clearly in my handwriting office. Affair, Aspen, money, mother. Dad. Michelle's voice was barely a whisper. What is this? Brandon's face had gone pale. His jaw tightened, and I saw his hand grip the armrest of the couch. These, I said quietly, looking at Michelle, are things you need to see. Walter. Brandon said, his voice suddenly hard. What the hell are you doing, showing my daughter the truth? Michelle looked between us, confusion and fear flickering across her face. Truth. What truth? Dad, you promised this wasn't... I know what I promised, I said. But some things are more important than promises. Your safety, your future, your happiness. Dad, you're scaring me. I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry. I placed my hand on the first folder. But I need you to trust me. Just for a little while longer. Brandon leaned forward, his voice tight. Michelle, we don't have to sit here and listen to this. Let's go. No, I said firmly. You're going to sit there, and you're going to let her see what I have to show her. Or what? Brandon's eyes flashed with anger. Or she'll wonder for the rest of her life why you were so desperate to leave. Michelle looked at Brandon, then back at me. Her hands were trembling. Dad, what is this? I took a deep breath and opened the first folder. Inside were printouts, photos I'd taken of the Coldwell Banker office directory, showing both Brandon's and Amber's names. Notes from my conversation with Tom. A handwritten statement from Jessica, the receptionist. I slid the first page across the table toward Michelle. Last Monday, I said, my voice steady. I went to Brandon's office. I told the receptionist I was looking for him. She said he'd gone to lunch. I paused. With Amber, his girlfriend. Michelle's eyes went wide. What? That's what she said. Brandon's out with Amber, his girlfriend. Those were her exact words. Brandon's face flushed red. She's confused. Amber's a colleague. The receptionist doesn't know what she's talking about. Then explain this. I pulled out another page, a printout of Jessica's note written in her bubbly handwriting. Brandon Coleman plus Amber Wright equals office couple together 1+ year. Michelle took the paper with shaking hands. Dad, this could be a mistake. It's not. I picked up my phone and played the recording I'd made of Tom. Tom's voice filled the room. Brandon's married. Are you sure? I've worked with him for 3 years. I've never heard him mention a wife. Not once. He talks about Amber all the time. The whole office knows they're together. Michelle's hand went to her mouth. I talked to Tom Mitchell, I said. Senior agent at Coldwell Banker. He confirmed that everyone in the office thinks Brandon is single. Or rather dating Amber. They've been bringing her to office parties, company events, happy hours, for over a year. That's not, Brandon started. I'm not done. I cut him off. I opened the second folder. This one was full of photos. I spread them across the coffee table one by one. Brandon and Amber in the parking lot at Cherry Creek Shopping Center, his arm around her waist, her leaning into him, their lips pressed together in a kiss. Brandon and Amber at a candlelit table at Capitol Grill, holding hands across the table, him kissing her knuckles. Brandon fastening a diamond necklace around Amber's neck in a jewelry store parking lot. Michelle stared at the photos, her breathing shallow. No, this isn't. It is, I said quietly. These were taken over the past 2 weeks by a private investigator. Brandon shot to his feet. You hired someone to follow me. Yes. You had no right. I had every right. I looked at Michelle. Sweetheart, I know this is hard, but there's more. I pulled out a receipt and placed it in front of her. Trice Jewelers. 1 diamond pendant necklace, 1.5 carats. Total $3,847. Payment method, Visa, ending in 4829. That's the necklace in the photo, I said. The one he's putting on her. He bought it with your joint credit card. November 14th. Michelle's hands were shaking so hard, the receipt fluttered. Brandon. He didn't answer. His jaw was clenched, his fists tight at his sides. I opened the third folder. November 3rd through 7th, I said. Brandon told you he was going to San Diego for a real estate conference. Do you remember? Michelle nodded slowly, tears starting to stream down her face. He didn't go to San Diego. I slid a hotel receipt across the table. He went to Aspen, with Amber. The receipt showed it clearly, St. Regis Aspen Resort. Guest Brandon Coleman. 4 nights. Total $1,350. Visa ending in 4829. Behind it was a screenshot from Amber's social media, her standing on a snow-covered balcony with mountains in the background. Champagne in hand, the location tag reading St. Regis Aspen Resort. November 4th. There was no conference, I said. He lied to you. He took her on a romantic trip and paid for it with your money. Shoo. Michelle was crying openly now, staring at the receipt, at the photo, at Brandon. You said it was exhausting. You said you were tired from all the networking. Brandon's face had gone from red to pale. Michelle, I can explain. Explain what? Her voice broke. Explain why you lied. Explain why you're in Aspen with another woman while I'm working double shifts at the hospital. It's not what it looks like. Stop. I opened the 4th folder. There's more. This one had a spreadsheet Marcus had prepared. A detailed breakdown of Brandon's spending over the past 2 months. Trice Jewelers, $3,847. Regis Aspen Resort, $1,003, $150. Matsuhisa Restaurant, Aspen 3, $140. Capitol Grille, $217. Cherry Creek Shopping estimated, $120. Flowers Gifts Miscellaneous, $60. Total $100. 624, I pointed to the total. $11,624. That's what he spent on Amber in the past 2 months. All of it charged to the credit card linked to your joint account. Michelle stared at the numbers, her face ashen. You gave Brandon $25,000. I continued. You thought it was for his mother's medical care, but he spent over $11,000 of it on his girlfriend. I looked at Brandon. Which brings me to my question. Where's the other 14,000? Brandon said nothing. His hands were shaking now, too. I opened the fifth and final folder. Inside were photos I'd taken at Pinewood Care Center. Edith's small cold room, the worn furniture, the broken window latch, and a printed transcript of my conversation with her. Last Saturday, I said, I went to see your mother-in-law, Edith Marshall. She's at Pinewood Care Center in Aurora. Michelle looked up, her eyes red and swollen. How is she? Not good. I slid the photos toward her. She's living in a room that barely has heat. She pays her rent with Social Security, $1,200 a month. That's all she has. But Brandon said the medical bills were so high. There are no medical bills, I said. Edith isn't getting any special treatment, no medications beyond basic prescriptions for blood pressure and arthritis, no extra care, nothing. I played another recording on my phone, Edith's thin, trembling voice. Brandon hasn't sent me any money. He promised to buy me a winter coat, a navy blue one, but he never did. I haven't seen him in 6 months. Michelle's face crumpled. She pressed her hands to her mouth, sobbing. He lied about his mother, I said. He lied about the money. He lied about the trip. He lied about Amber. He's been lying to you about everything, Michelle. I looked at Brandon, who stood frozen, his face a mask of barely controlled rage and fear. So I'll ask you one more time, Brandon. Where's the other $14,000? Silence. Michelle looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, her voice barely a whisper. Brandon. He didn't answer. She stood up slowly, the photos scattered on the coffee table between us. Dad. Her voice broke. Is all of this real? I looked at my daughter, my strong, beautiful daughter who'd worked so hard, sacrificed so much, trusted so completely. And I nodded. Yes, sweetheart. It's all real. She turned to Brandon, waiting for him to deny it, to explain, to tell her I was lying. But he said nothing. And in that silence, her world shattered. Type a number 1 to 10 in the comments. To rate this story so far, I'd love to know your thoughts. Quick reminder, some elements are dramatized for storytelling. You're welcome to leave now if you prefer. I want to send you warm wishes for good health. Please take care and keep yourself warm. Now let's continue. For a long moment, nobody moved. Brandon stood frozen, his face cycling through emotions, shock, fear, anger. Michelle sat on the couch, staring at the evidence scattered across the coffee table, her chest heaving with sobs she was trying to hold back. Then Brandon dropped to his knees in front of her. Michelle, he said, his voice urgent, pleading. Baby, listen to me. Please, this isn't what it looks like. I can explain everything. Michelle didn't look at him. She just stared straight ahead, tears streaming down her face. Your father, he's twisting everything, making it seem worse than it is. Amber is just a friend. Those photos are out of context. The trip to Aspen was a work thing, I swear. Stop lying, I said quietly. Brandon's head snapped toward me, his eyes flashing with fury. You stay out of this? No. I stood up. I won't, because there's one more thing you haven't explained. What? Brandon's voice was venomous now. The private investigator found something else. A credit card debt, $15,000 in your name, high interest, maxed out. That's why you needed Michelle's money, isn't it? Brandon's face went white. Michelle looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. $15,000 in debt. It's not. Brandon stammered. It is, I said. You were drowning in debt. You needed cash, so you lied to Michelle about your mother being sick. Took $25,000, spent $11,000 on your girlfriend, and used the rest to pay off your credit cards. That's not true, Brandon shouted, standing up. You're making this up. You hired some hack to fabricate evidence because you never liked me. You've been trying to ruin my marriage from day one. Then explain the photos, I said calmly. Explain the hotel receipt. Explain why your coworkers think you're single. Explain why your mother hasn't seen you in 6 months. Brandon's hands clenched into fists. You had no right to go to my office, no right to follow me, no right to talk to my mother. I had every right. My voice was steel now, because you're stealing from my daughter. She gave me that money willingly. Under false pretenses. That's called fraud. Brandon stepped toward me, his face twisted with rage. You self-righteous old man. You think you're protecting her. You're destroying her life. No, I said, standing my ground. You already did that. Michelle stood up suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension. Stop. Both of you just stop. We both turned to look at her. She was shaking her arms wrapped around herself, like she was trying to hold herself together. Brandon, she said, her voice trembling but clear. Look at me. He turned to face her, his expression softening, trying to regain control. Michelle, sweetheart, Did you love me? She asked. When we got married, when you said your vows, did you ever love me? Brandon opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time all night, he seemed to be at a loss for words. Answer her, I said quietly. Brandon's jaw tightened. He looked at Michelle, at me, then back at Michelle. And something in him snapped. No, he shouted. No, I didn't love you. Is that what you want to hear? I never loved you. Michelle flinched like she'd been slapped. Brandon was unraveling now, words pouring out in a torrent of venom. You want the truth? Fine, I needed money. I was buried in debt, credit cards, loans, everything. I needed someone stable, someone with a steady income who wouldn't ask too many questions. And you were perfect, Michelle. So trusting, so naive. You believed every word I said. Michelle's face was pale, her eyes wide with shock. And your mother? I asked, my voice cold. What about her? Brandon laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. Not that old woman, she's worthless. I don't owe her anything. She's lived her life. I'm not wasting my money keeping her comfortable in some overpriced nursing home. Michelle let out a choked sob. You're disgusting, I said. Brandon spun toward me. And you're a meddling old fool who couldn't mind his own business. How long? Michelle's voice was barely audible. How long were you planning to keep doing this? Brandon looked at her, and for a moment I thought he might show a shred of remorse. But instead he sneered. As long as it took, another 6 months maybe, until I paid off my debts and saved enough to start fresh. Then I would have left. Clean break. You would have been fine. Michelle's hand flew up and connected with his face, a sharp, resounding slap that echoed through the room. Brandon's head snapped to the side. He touched his cheek, stunned. Then his expression twisted into something cruel. You think you're special, he hissed. You think anyone else would want you. You're boring, Michelle. You work all the time. You're exhausting to be around. I did you a favor by pretending to care. That was enough. I stepped between them, putting myself in front of Michelle. Get out. What? I said get out of my house. Now. Brandon's eyes narrowed. You can't throw me out. Michelle is my wife. Not for long, I said. By Monday morning, she'll have a lawyer. By the end of the month, she'll have divorce papers. And if you're smart, you'll sign them without a fight. Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. Your office, your clients, everyone. Brandon's face flushed red. You're bluffing. Try me. For a moment, we stood there locked in a silent standoff. Then Brandon laughed, cold, hollow. Fine, he said. So keep her. She's not worth the trouble anyway. He grabbed his jacket from the chair and headed for the door. But before he left, he turned back and looked at Michelle one last time. Good luck, Michelle, he said, his voice dripping with mockery. You're going to need it. Then he walked out, slamming the door behind him. The house fell silent. Michelle stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the closed door, her body trembling. Then her knees buckled. I caught her before she hit the floor and guided her back to the couch. She collapsed into the cushions, her face buried in her hands, and let out a wail that tore straight through my heart. I sat beside her and wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close. She sobbed into my shoulder, great shuddering sobs that shook her entire body. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. She couldn't speak. She just cried, clinging to me like she was drowning. I held her tight, my own tears burning behind my eyes. On the coffee table, the pearl necklace sat untouched, gleaming softly in the lamplight, a symbol of love and family forgotten in the wreckage of a broken marriage. Michelle didn't speak for 3 hours. After Brandon left, after the door slammed shut and the sound of his car faded down the street, she just sat on the couch in my living room. Silent. Still. Her eyes fixed on the pearl necklace lying on the coffee table beside the scattered evidence of her husband's betrayal. I didn't push her. I didn't ask if she was okay, because I knew she wasn't. Instead, I quietly gathered up the folders, the photos, the receipts, and put them back in the cabinet under the coffee table. Out of sight, but not forgotten. Then I went to the kitchen and made tea. It was something Sarah used to do whenever Michelle was upset. Chamomile with a little honey. Sarah would say it couldn't fix the problem, but it could make the moment a little softer. I carried 2 mugs into the living room and set one on the table in front of Michelle. She didn't reach for it. She just stared at the necklace, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I sat down in the armchair across from her and sipped my own tea, waiting. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence. Outside, a car passed. A dog barked somewhere down the block, normal sounds from a world that kept turning oblivious to the fact that my daughter's life had just shattered. Finally, at 10:15, Michelle spoke. I believed him. Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Every word, every lie. I believed all of it. I know. How could I be so stupid? You're not stupid, I said firmly. You loved him. You trusted him. That's not stupidity. That's what marriage is supposed to be. She shook her head, tears welling up again. But I should have seen it. The signs were all there, the expensive things, the trips, the way he always had an excuse when I wanted to visit his mother. Her voice broke. How did I miss it? Because you didn't want to see it, I said gently. Because seeing it would mean facing something you weren't ready to face. She looked at me, then her eyes red and swollen. Did you know before tonight? Did you know all along that he didn't love me, huh? No. I set my mug down. I had my doubts about Brandon. I thought he was too smooth, too polished. But I didn't know. Not until Linda told me she saw him with Amber. That's when I started looking. Michelle was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I gave him $25,000, my entire savings, I know. And he spent it on her. on trips and jewelry and lies. Yes. She let out a choked laugh that turned into a sob. I worked so hard for that money, Dad. Double shifts, extra hours. I was saving it for a down payment on a bigger house, maybe a trip someday. And he just took it. I didn't have words for that. Nothing I could say would make it hurt less. Michelle wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't want to go home, she whispered. I can't go back to that house. Not tonight. Then you'll stay here. She looked up, her expression fragile, almost childlike. Is that okay? Of course it's okay. This is your home too. It always will be. She nodded slowly, then stood up on shaky legs. I need to lie down. Your room's upstairs, same as always. She started toward the stairs, then paused and looked back at me. Thank you, Dad, for everything tonight. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too. She climbed the stairs slowly, like every step took effort. I listened to her footsteps move down the hall, heard the creak of her old bedroom door opening and closing. Then silence. I sat in the living room for a while longer, finishing my tea. The house felt heavy, like the weight of what had happened was pressing down on the walls. I thought about Brandon's face when he'd confessed, the venom in his voice when he'd said he never loved her, the cruelty in his words when he called his own mother worthless. I thought about Michelle's face, the way it had crumpled when the truth finally hit her. And I wondered if I'd done the right thing, if showing her the truth had been an act of love or an act of destruction. At midnight, I turned off the lights downstairs and climbed the stairs to my own room. But as I passed Michelle's door, I stopped. I could hear her crying, soft, muffled sobs that she was trying to keep quiet. The sound of someone trying to break apart silently so no one else would have to carry the weight of her pain. I stood outside her door, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Part of me wanted to go in to sit beside her to tell her it would be okay. But I didn't, because some grief is too private, too raw to be witnessed. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is give someone space to fall apart. So I walked to the end of the hall and sat down on the floor, my back against the wall, where I could still hear her, but where she wouldn't know I was there. And I stayed. I stayed while she cried. I stayed while the sobs turned to silence. I stayed while the house settled into the deep quiet of the early morning hours. At 2 o'clock, the crying finally stopped. I sat there a little longer, just to be sure, then quietly made my way to my own room. I didn't sleep. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house, the creak of old floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the distant sound of a car passing on the street outside. And I thought about Sarah, about how much I missed her, about how much I wished she were here to help Michelle through this. At 6:30 in the morning, I heard Michelle's door open. I got up and went downstairs. She appeared a few minutes later, standing in the doorway of the kitchen. Her eyes were swollen and red, her hair messy, her face pale. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. "Morning," I said softly. She didn't answer right away. She just stood there looking lost. "I called in sick to work," she said finally. I can't go in today." "That's okay. Can I stay here?" Her voice was small, tentative. "With you just for a little while." I crossed the kitchen and pulled her into a hug. She buried her face in my shoulder, and I felt her body start to shake again. "You can stay as long as you need," I said. "As long as you want. This is your home, Michelle. Always." She clung to me, and we stood there in the kitchen while the morning light crept through the windows. Outside, the world kept turning, But in that moment in my kitchen, with my daughter in my arms, time felt like it had stopped. And for now, that was enough. December came with cold rain and gray skies. Michelle had been living with me for 3 weeks when I finally convinced her it was time to see a lawyer. On a Monday morning, I drove her to downtown Denver to meet David Richardson, a divorce attorney Marcus had recommended. His office was on 17th Street, all glass and steel. Richardson was in his 50s, gray-haired with a calm demeanor. He shook our hands and gestured to the chairs across from his desk. "Ms. Brooks," he said gently, "I'm very sorry you're going through this." Michelle nodded but didn't speak. I pulled out Marcus's report and slid it across the desk. He stole $25,000 from her under false pretenses, spent it on his mistress. Richardson flipped through the pages, photos, receipts, witness statements. "This is thorough. Colorado is a no-fault divorce state, but this evidence will be useful if he contests anything. And given the fraud, you could file criminal charges if you wanted." Michelle looked up sharply. "I just want him gone. I don't want to drag this out." Richardson nodded. "Understood. I'll draft the papers. We'll ask for the house half the joint account and reimbursement of at least part of the $25,000. If he doesn't contest, this could be done in 6 to 8 weeks. 2 days later, the papers were served. Brandon signed within 48 hours. No fight, no argument. He just signed and sent them back. Marcus called a week later, yet Brandon quit Coldwell Banker, left town. Word is he and Amber moved to Arizona, Phoenix maybe. "Let him run," I said, "as long as he stays away from Michelle." By mid-December, the financial picture became clear. The joint account had $8,000 left. Michelle got all of it. The rest of the $25,000 was gone. Spent, withdrawn, vanished. Richardson tried to track it, but Brandon had moved money in ways that were hard to trace. "We could fight for more," Richardson told us, "but it would take months and cost thousands in legal fees. There's no guarantee we'd recover anything." Michelle shook her head. "I don't want to fight anymore. I just want to be done." By Christmas, the divorce was final. Michelle held the decree in her hands on a cold Saturday afternoon, staring at it like she couldn't believe it was real. "It's over," she whispered. "It's over," I confirmed. She looked up at me, her eyes empty. "Why don't I feel better?" In January, Michelle made a decision. "I'm selling the house," she said one morning over breakfast. "Are you sure?" "Yes. I can't live there anymore. Every room reminds me of him. I need to start over." "Where will you go?" She looked at me hesitant. "Could I stay here just for a while?" "Of course. Stay as long as you want." She sold the house in February. It went quickly, nice neighborhood, eager buyers. The sale netted her $85,000 after paying off the mortgage. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was something. Michelle went back to work at St. Joseph Hospital in late December. Her co-workers welcomed her back with quiet kindness. No one asked questions. They just supported her. One of the nurses, Karen, pulled me aside when I came to pick Michelle up after a shift. "She's strong," Karen said. "Stronger than she knows. She'll get through this." "I know," I said. "But it's hard to watch." "It always is." That evening, Michelle and I sat in my living room. She'd been quiet all day, staring out windows, picking at her dinner. Finally, she pulled the divorce decree out of her bag and held it up. "I'm free," she said, her voice hollow. "I legally, officially free. No more Brandon, no more lies, no more marriage." "That's a good thing," I said carefully. "Then why does it feel so empty?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I thought freedom would feel different. I thought I'd feel relieved or happy. But I just feel nothing." I moved to sit beside her on the couch. Because it's not just about being free from him. It's about losing the life you thought you had, the future you'd planned. That takes time to grieve. She leaned her head on my shoulder. How long, Dad? I don't know, sweetheart, but you'll get there. I promise. She held the decree, staring at the official seal, the signatures, the legal language that ended 4 years of her life. I'm free, she whispered again. But it sounded like a question. January came quietly, bringing with it a hesitant kind of hope. Michelle had been living with me for 2 months, and slowly, so slowly, I almost didn't notice at first, she was starting to heal. She laughed occasionally. She talked about work. She made plans for the future. And one morning over breakfast, she said something that surprised me. I want to see Edith. I looked up from my coffee. Brandon's mother. Yes. Michelle set down her fork. I've been thinking about her, about what you told me. She's all alone in that place, and it's my fault. I sent Brandon money to take care of her, and he just abandoned her. That's not your fault. I know, but I still feel responsible. She deserves better. And Dad. Michelle's eyes met mine. Brandon promised her a coat, a navy blue winter coat. I want to give it to her. So that Saturday, we went shopping. We drove to a department store in Lakewood, and Michelle walked straight to the women's outerwear section. She found a beautiful navy blue coat, wool blend, warm lining, simple and elegant. It cost $120. Perfect, she said, running her hand over the fabric. We bought other things too. A soft fleece blanket for $40. A warm scarf for $25. Thick wool socks for $15. Michelle paid for everything herself. I want to do this, she said, when I tried to hand her my credit card. It matters to me. Sunday morning, we drove to Pinewood Care Center in Aurora. I parked in the same spot I'd used months ago, and together we walked inside carrying the bags of gifts. The receptionist barely looked up as we headed down the familiar hallway to room 14. I knocked gently. Mrs. Marshall, it's Walter Green. I've brought someone to see you. Come in, Edith's voice called. Michelle took a deep breath and we stepped inside. Edith was sitting in her armchair by the window, just as she had been the last time I'd visited. But when she saw Michelle, her face transformed. Michelle, she whispered. Is that really you? Michelle crossed the room quickly and knelt down beside the chair. Hi, Edith. I'm so sorry I haven't come to see you sooner. Edith reached out with trembling hands and touched Michelle's face. Oh, my dear girl, I've missed you so much. Michelle's eyes filled with tears. I missed you too. And I'm so sorry. I thought Brandon was taking care of you. I thought the money I sent was helping. I had no idea he was lying to me. I should have come to check on you myself. I should have... Stop, Edith said, gently cupping Michelle's face. This isn't your fault. None of it. Brandon is my son and I love him, but what he did, that was his choice, not yours. Michelle let out a sob and buried her face in Edith's lap. The old woman stroked her hair, murmuring soft words of comfort. I stood by the door watching them, my chest tight. After a few minutes, Michelle sat up and wiped her eyes. I brought you something, she said, her voice thick with emotion. She pulled the navy blue coat out of the bag and held it up. Edith gasped. Is that the coat Brandon promised you? I know it's late. I know it doesn't make up for everything, but I wanted you to have it. Edith's hands shook as she reached for it. Michelle helped her stand, then gently draped the coat over her shoulders. It fit perfectly. It's beautiful, Edith whispered, running her hands over the sleeves. Thank you, Michelle. Or there's more. Michelle pulled out the blanket, the scarf, the socks. For when it gets cold. Edith's eyes filled with tears. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. They hugged again, and I saw something in Michelle's face I hadn't seen in months. Peace. Mrs. Marshall, I said, stepping forward. There's one more thing. Next week, we're moving you out of here. Edith blinked. Moving me. To a better facility. Sunrise Assisted Living about 20 minutes from my house. It's warmer, cleaner, with better care. Michelle and I are going to cover the cost. Edith looked between us, stunned. I can't let you do that. It's already done, Michelle said firmly. You deserve to be comfortable. You deserve to be taken care of. And we're going to make sure you are. Edith broke down, then sobbing into Michelle's shoulder, thanking us over and over. 1 week later, I drove Edith to her new home. Sunrise Assisted Living was everything Pinewood wasn't: bright, clean, warm. Her room had a large window overlooking a garden, a comfortable bed, a small sitting area. The staff was friendly and attentive. When we settled Edith into her new room, she sat on the bed in her navy blue coat and looked around with wonder. I never thought I'd have something like this, she said softly. Michelle sat beside her and took her hand. You deserve it, and we're going to visit you every week. I promise. As we left that afternoon, I looked back and saw Edith standing at her window, waving goodbye, a smile on her face. Michelle waved back, and when we got to the car, she turned to me. Oh, thank you, Dad, for showing me what needed to be done. You're the one who did it, I said. She shook her head. We did it together. We drove home in comfortable silence, and for the first time since that terrible night in November, I saw something in Michelle's expression that looked like relief, like maybe she was going to be okay. Looking back now, 10 months after that terrible Saturday night, I realized something important about Family Story. It doesn't just hurt the person being deceived. It ripples outward, touching everyone who loves them. I've learned that trust, once broken, leaves scars that time alone cannot heal. Michelle trusted Brandon completely, and he weaponized that trust against her. That's the cruelest form of Family Story, when someone you've built your life with uses your love as a tool for their own gain. If I could offer one piece of advice from these dad revenge I've lived through, it's this. Don't ignore the warning signs. Don't let love blind you to reality. If something feels wrong, investigate. Ask questions. Protect yourself and those you love. I almost waited too long, and it nearly cost Michelle everything. But I've also learned something beautiful: resilience. Michelle didn't just survive Brandon's lies, she's thriving now. She's stronger, wiser, more careful with her heart. And isn't that what these dad revenge are really about? Not the pain, but the healing that comes after. Family Story taught us both that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is tell a painful truth. Sometimes you have to break someone's heart to save their life. As the Bible reminds us, the truth will set you free. It may hurt first, but freedom always follows. My advice: trust your instincts. Protect your family fiercely. And never ever let someone make you doubt what you know in your gut to be true. Because in the end, these dad revenge aren't just mine. They're lessons for anyone who's ever loved someone enough to fight for them. Thank you for walking this journey with me to the very end. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if you found yourself in my shoes, watching someone you love being deceived? Your perspective matters to me. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing so you won't miss future stories. A gentle reminder: while inspired by real-life situations and social dynamics, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this content isn't to your taste, Feel free to explore other videos that might suit you better.